to Philosophy for the People, Home Edition, or as I like to say, COVID-19 edition. I hope you're all doing well, and I'm really happy that you all made it out tonight from your homes. As you can see, I've got a nice little salt lamp candle going back there for you to create a little atmosphere here. So it looks like our theme tonight is going to be self-awareness. Definitely something we can all relate to. I really think that each of us is on an inner hero's journey as we go through life, and I just think that's a really beautiful thing. And we have 4 lovely ladies here sharing with us tonight about their inner hero or heroine's journey. So I'm really excited to hear from all of them. We have Gordana, Heather, Mariah, and Rachel. So I was given the choice to pick who would be in the hot seat first tonight. So I think I'm going to put Heather on the spot.
Of course, I would be first.
Heather, I'm wondering, can you tell us a little, before you start, can you, about your self-awareness journey, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like a general introduction.
So general introduction, I'm Heather. I'm an Air Force vet. That's actually how I met Rachel, in leadership school. Years and years ago. She was just a wee little Rach then. But I am October 1st, 2016, and that's really for me kind of where my journey into self-awareness has really started, was getting sober. I'm also a mom of a soon-to-be 20-year-old, a soon-to-be 11-year-old, and I live in Tennessee, and it's not beautiful here like it is in Florida right now. I wish I was on a beach with you guys instead of cooped up in rainy weather, but it works for what it does.
Very cool. Thank you. That was a good introduction. It is cool to know that you know Rachel for so long. That's really neat. So without further ado, if you could tell us about your inner journey of self-awareness.
Yeah. So, I've always considered myself to be somebody who had a presence of self at all times. I just think for me that I didn't understand, though, was that I really wore a mask for the longest time. I had a personality that was larger than life, pretty grandiose, and I did that, and I was that way because I just didn't want people to get too close, because if you got too close to me, then you were close enough to hurt me. And in the end, what it boiled down to is I was just terrified of being vulnerable. I was terrified of people, places, things. I was full of fear, and I had no idea. I drank to cover up a lot of things, and I always justified my drinking by saying, if you had the life that I had, you would drink too. If you had been through the things that I had, you would drink too. And that was always my justification, is you would drink too. I never felt like alcohol was necessarily a crutch. For me, it made me, I thought it made me fun. I thought it made me jovial and relaxed. But then towards the end of my drinking, what it really did is it isolated me from everybody and everything. I didn't go anywhere. I drank at home. I drank alone. I would drink until 2-3 in the morning, and then pass out when I ran out of alcohol, get up, go to work the next morning, and do the same thing. It was just the same thing every single day. No matter how much I felt like I wanted, I couldn't. It was as if the choice to not drink had been removed, and I didn't have a choice anymore. And I was drinking towards the end out of necessity. September 29th of 2016, I was given the gift of desperation, and kind of came into a moment where it was either I had to stop drinking or I knew I was going to die. And so I got sober. I walked into an AA meeting and I said, you know, I need help. I didn't go to treatment. I did it the old-fashioned 12-step way, and that for me has been the most liberating thing that I've ever done. When I got sober, the things that I learned about myself was, you know, first, I was absolutely full of fear. Everything in my life, every bad decision, every negative emotion that I felt, it all boiled down to fear. I was either afraid I was going to lose what I thought I had, which didn't belong to me anyways, or I felt like I wasn't going to get what I deserved, and that's why I drank. I learned how to take responsibility for my life. There were a lot of traumas that I went through early on in childhood, and then while I was in the military, and I learned how to take responsibility, not necessarily for the trauma that happened to me, but for the healing that I had to take care of. And I learned that, you know, my part in that stuff wasn't so much that, you know, that I asked for any of this stuff to happen. Things happened, but I continued to live in those. I stopped growing, and I just stayed stagnant in that victimhood and in that mentality. And sobriety allowed me to move out of that and to see that, you know, I could move past these things. It taught me how to go inward, and look to that stream of consciousness between me and the universe, or God, or whatever it is that you want to call it. For me, it just taught me to connect to something bigger than me, and being able to understand who and what I am, why I think the way that I do, and being able to have that awareness of thought and action, and being able to pause. Like, there's so many times where, you know, I've had to step back and say, okay, why do I feel this way? Do I really need? And feelings are not facts, and that was something that I really needed to learn, because I was controlled by my emotions, even though I would tell you that I wasn't, that I was emotionless and I was, you know, pretty cold-hearted in that sense, but I really was ruled by my emotions. And today I've learned to be able to take a step back, look at other people and look at them with kindness and love and compassion, and understand that, you know, we're all doing, you know, the best we can with what we have. Some people are given these gifts to be able to have people around them that are willing to hold them up and show them this path of going inward. Some people are lucky in that sense, and they get to do that work. Other people aren't aware of themselves. They're not aware of their traumas, and they don't want to be. And I have to look at these people with just as much compassion as I do the people that want to move out of that. So today I live in a way, and I examine my life in a way where I'm looking at everybody and everything through this lens of being kind, compassionate, loving, and tolerant, and it makes me a happier person. I can be content in my skin. I can be okay being alone. This quarantine thing is kind of it's, for me, it's a really weird little bubble, because right now everybody's isolated. Everybody's supposed to be distant from each other, and it feels so natural to me, because at the end of my drinking, I was completely isolated from everybody and everything, because if I was isolated, I couldn't hurt you. The only person I was hurting was myself, so I thought. So situation feels normal for me, but I have to realize that just because it feels normal doesn't mean that I don't still have to reach out and to have interactions with people in whatever way that I can, so that I can still stay connected, because I don't know that I'm crazy, or I don't know that like things are going on in my head that are off balance until I talk to another person. And so it's me, like those are the things that I do to continue to be aware of my own self, is I have a very small group of people that I can call and check in with, and I can say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. And they can be like, you might want to re-examine that, or yeah, that's pretty normal. I let people into my life now, a very small group, because I still struggle with being, but those are all things that I'm learning. Everybody has their story, and I think the more that we learn to tell our story in a loving, kind way to ourselves and about ourselves, instead of painting this picture like we're horrible people, or there's something wrong with us because we don't react in a certain way like we see other people. When we learn to take our own story and take responsibility for it, really, really beautiful things can happen in your life. And I think the most beautiful thing is just being aware of who I am and being comfortable in my skin, so that I don't have to try to be what other people think I should be, or how I want other people to see me. I can just be me today.
That was very cool. Thank you. Let me put it up so I can see everybody. A couple things really stood out to me from your story, which was really, you just are so eloquent and you're so self-aware. It was really cool. Thank you for sharing. I really liked how in the beginning you said that you felt that, if people were you, they would drink too. And then you said later, like how, you can see people with such compassionate eyes. And I think it's like you have that awareness that everyone is the product, of their causes and conditions. And I'm wondering, have you always felt like that? Have you always been able to see people with that compassionate lens?
No, to a degree, to some degree, yes. Like I wanted to believe the best about everybody, but on the converse side of that, if somebody stepped on my toes, instead of saying, well, maybe I was in the way, I would assassinate their character. Like, how dare this person step on my toes? Don't they know who I am? And so, like, I looked at it from this very egocentric kind of way, that all the stuff that was happening in the world, it wasn't just stuff that was happening, right? It was stuff that was happening to me. Like, everything about me. I was the center of everybody's disdain, and that is so, like, that it's almost like feeling that way is almost like walking around with chains on all the time, and you're and each person that steps in my way or aggravates me, like, they are now on this chain gang, and I'm dragging me and them and so on and so on, and all I was doing was dragging my resentment towards other people and making these people seem bigger than they are in my head. Today, like, I don't want like that. I want the chains to be off. I want to be able to move through life and not be miserable. I mean, that was a really miserable existence for me. And now, when I was lucky in the sense that I've always had people who love me and people who showed me kindness and tolerance. And because I had that, I had really good models for what type of behavior was acceptable. Like, getting sober for me is like akin to a toddler learning how to walk. I'm learning how to take these steps all over again. And because so many people showed me love, compassion, and kindness, job to show that to other people, because you never know who's going to be the person, you know, that gives you that moment of love that saves your life. And that's what was given to me. You know, the person that held my hand and told me, you know, you don't ever have to drink again if you don't want to. They showed me so much love and kindness that at the time I thought that phrase was absolute BS. But as luck would have it, like I've been through a lot in sobriety, and I haven't found it necessary to take a drink. And so how I show my gratitude to the universe for allowing me to get sober is I pass that on to other people, whether it's somebody who's trying to get sober or whether or not it's just somebody who's, you know, not used to being treated with love and compassion. You know, that's my duty today, is to treat people with that same love and compassion, because everybody needs it. You know, especially people who are the meanest, angriest SOBs out there, right? Those people are really and truly at their core, they're little wounded souls that just need somebody to like, oh, it's okay, I love you. That's what I needed, you know. And so I do try to give that back, but I also have developed this thing with my gut, right? Like now when my gut says, maybe that's not somebody you want to be around, maybe that's not a situation you want to put yourself in. Now that's something that like I learned to trust. Before I didn't trust it because it was always there, but I didn't listen to it. So yeah, I treat people with love and kindness today, but I also have that discernment where if it's not a situation, if it's not a safe person, like I don't put myself in that situation.
That's really cool that you've learned to trust yourself that much. I think that's really valuable. I was wondering too, I had one other question. Something really stood out to me when you said you were connecting with something bigger than yourself. And I feel like you just touched on that too when you were talking about how you're being able to think of others so much now. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think deep down inside of every human being is this like fundamental idea of something, whether you want to call it God, whether you want to call it whatever you want to call it. There's this thing inside of us that we want to be connected to. There's a poem that I absolutely love, and you're a child of the universe, and you belong here. And it goes on to say just as much as you are just as much as the stars are in the universe, you're in the stars. And it's such a beautiful poem, but it's meant so much to me because I do believe that there is something much bigger than all of us, whether people want to believe it or not. Like the same matter that exists in the universe exists in our DNA, and so we're all connected somehow. And I'd like to believe that we're all connected by love, and the more that we try to tap into that love, the more that we act, as Christians would say, Christ-like, right? Like really Christ-like, not Christ-like your way. But really, if we try to be love and just try to walk through this world the way that Jesus did, I think that, you know, we learn to be in tune with who we are, because we realize like that same God consciousness, like it exists inside of us. You know, we just have to learn how to tap into it. We have to learn how to spread it, and you spread it by interacting with other people. I'm a really big fan of the phrase God is love, because I absolutely believe that when you live your life in a way that exudes love, transmits love, and you're open to feeling love, and not romantic love, just love of humanity, closest to God we're going to get until, you know, and who knows what's after that.
Well, Heather, thank you so much for sharing. You were awesome. And it sounds like your journey of self-discovery has led you to a very wise and knowing place. And I think that is really cool. So thank you so much. Yeah, I can tell there's a lot of very deep wisdom there.
I would be it would be unfair if I didn't say for sure having Rachel as a best friend through the years has really helped me. Like, and I really think that the universe puts people in your life that are meant to be there, some for a season and some for a lifetime. And Rachel's one of the greatest teachers that I've ever had, and I could not be where I am today if it wasn't for her love and our friendship.
Oh, that was so sweet. Rachel is a very big-hearted person. Very much so. Oh, guys. Well, thank you so much, Heather. So next up, we have my good friend Gordana is going to share with us a little bit about her journey of self-discovery. All right, she's unmuted herself. Hello, Gordana. How are you doing?
I was so wise to mute myself because when I get into other people's stories and what they're saying, I'm like, yeah, I know, right?
I was watching you.
I was doing a lot of that. I'm glad I was on mute.
I was watching you because I know you do that, and I could see you like really getting into it or some part.
Well, anyways, my name is Gordana, and I'm really honored to be able to be here tonight and share with you guys. I love these meetings, so wow, so cool that I get to be up here talking. I live in Seminole Heights in Tampa, Florida. I'm a dog mama, very proud one. I love nature and listening to podcasts, trying new recipes. And I like to practice mindfulness and meditation when I am in the mood. My current job involves a lot of writing, but when I was younger, I wrote a lot for fun and creativity, and I really hope one day that I can get back to that. It was really a wonderful way to express myself, and I miss it a lot. There is a Hebrew song that I used to have stuck in my head all the time, and I wanted to start off talking about this because I think it talks a lot about my journey. I never knew what the song meant, but I would go on walks and I would just hear it playing over and over again. And I'm not going to sing it for you. I have a really bad voice. But the lyrics are Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzar me'od v'hayikra lo lefahek klal. One day I finally looked it up, and what it means is that the whole world is a very narrow bridge, and the most important thing is not to let fear overtake you. I think for many reasons, that song is really representative of my experience with self-discovery. It's a daily listening to that still small voice, a following of a very narrow bridge. A lot of times it feels like a tightrope suspended midair with nothing to hold on to. The winds are blowing you this way and that. I think it's safe to say that anyone that's on this journey has experienced that or will experience it at some point. And you know, if you look to the right or the left, in an instant, the fear, the worry, the doubt, it all comes. And so, like, again and again, we're just turning our heads forward and putting one foot in front of the other. For a lot of my life, I didn't think I was on the path. When I was younger, I struggled, I mean, not that much younger, but I struggled a lot with chronic pain that didn't have an origin and substance abuse. And I had a really bad mental health problem that left me really depressed and for several years not wanting to live. And I know a lot of folks who have experienced that and are still going through that, and it's so, so difficult. And this is my experience. Of course, it's different for everyone. I know now that even in my darkest and most desperate moments that I was on the path, even though it didn't feel that way. In one of his poems, Rumi says, "Life's waters flow from darkness. Search the darkness, don't run from it. Night travelers are full of light, and you are too. Don't leave this companionship." And I think for a lot of us, this is where we start our journeys, in the darkness, when we can't see anything, when it feels impossible. And I didn't know then what I can see really clearly today, which that I was being completely deprogrammed, reprogrammed, reinvented, kind of given this opportunity, privilege, task, I don't know what you want to call it, but a chance to build a life worth living from scratch. One of the areas I've grown a lot in is learning to trust myself. And for me, that's a really important aspect of self-discovery, and really learning how to recognize and respond to my own inner guidance and my soul and my soul's calling. I was born and raised Jewish, and I had a very strong cultural identity. When I was going through some really difficult parts of my life, I had a therapist at the time who's still very near and dear to me. And one day she said to me, "So do you want to become a Christian?" And I don't know if any of you guys are Jewish, but it is super sacrilege for a Jew to become a Christian. The Jews do not like Jesus. And I don't know, I don't know what made me say yes to that. I was seeking to fill that, aching gap in my heart that we've all experienced. And I think for that reason, I was ripe for the picking, but still, there was no logic behind me doing that. And so in my own typical fashion, I was like, great, I signed up, I took Jesus into my heart, and I was like, what's next? Am I gonna have a revelation? Where does this happen? How does this happen? And we all know it doesn't work like that. But over the next few years, I joined an evangelical church. I got baptized in the Holy Spirit. I started going to Bible college. I was really all in. And I even tried to get my Jewish family to go to church. And you guys can imagine how that went. Not very well. But I did have a lot of life-changing experiences there. It was the first, even when I was younger, I touched mystery and I touched spirit, and I never had words to describe those things. But when I was in the church, I did feel, that loving presence, and it was able to remind me oh, I know I felt this before. And I think that is just a really transformative experience, even if you just touched into it for moments at a time. What was really challenging for me was buying into a lot of the beliefs that group of Christians, or maybe that church in particular, had. I tried really hard to believe these things. I wanted to fit in. I wanted that structure. I wanted to be a good Christian. And at some point, I realized that this was just not working for me. And that same momentum that got me to become a Christian in the first place got me to stop being a Christian, or, that it got me to leave the church. And at the time, it was so stressful for me. I really thought I was doing the wrong thing. I felt very guilty about it. And I remember for many, many months after that, I would walk in my neighborhood just crying to God and saying, I don't know what to believe. Can't you just tell me what to believe? I can't believe these things. I want to believe them. And it just went on and on like that. And then finally one day, one of my coworkers said to me, hey, you need to check out this person. And I think it was either Rob Bell or Richard Rohr, but whoever it was, I went and I looked them up, and for the first time I was reading something that matched like what was written on my heart. These things that I knew were true, even though I didn't really know how I knew them. And so my journey went on and on like that. I would learn from different teachers and then get to the point of not knowing, and someone or something or a place would come along and, you know, reveal a new layer to me. One of the things I do now, which I mentioned earlier, was that I go to the Florida Community of Mindfulness, and I'm in a group for folks in their 20s and 30s. And there are so many beautiful things that are taught there, which I really love. One of my best practices, though, is that I have full permission to take what I like and leave the rest. And that's not really fitting with my personality. I'm naturally type A, so it does take a lot of practice for me to be able to just enjoy those things that really resonate with me. And I feel like doing this, not only there, but in all areas of my life, I have been able to uncover these little gemstones along my path that keep leading me to whatever the, you know, my truth is. And, you know, there came a point in my life where I realized that we all have teachers, mentors, guides, ancestors, especially, you know, we're very fortunate to be able to have those people or spirits in our lives. But at the end of the day, there is no other person on this earth that can live out my destiny for me. There's no person that can tell me, like, this is what you need to do. This is the path you need to take. The only way to do that is to that continual listening and the willingness to make mistakes and to walk that very, very narrow bridge, one foot in front of the other, trusting that a stone is going to come beneath you to support you, even when you can't see it. And a lot of times that makes me really nauseous and terrified and just totally have to surrender. But it's also the greatest gift of all, because it's the adventure of a lifetime to be able to do that. So I'm really grateful that I learned to listen to that inner guidance. And I never thought I could be one of those people who's living a wild and wacky life. But lo and behold, like, anyone can be that person, you know? And something else I discovered, and I just wanted to make sure to talk about this, is, you know, when I unzipped myself and looked inside and took at all the parts, I found like there's a lot of light in there beneath all the character flaws, all of my regrets, times I'm impatient, times I harm the people I love, the parts of myself I hate, the parts of other people I hate. Beneath all of that is goodness. And it's not my goodness, it's the goodness, and it's available for everyone. It's there in everyone. Rumi again says it really beautifully. This is one of my favorite poems. I must have been incredibly drunk or simple or insane to sneak into my own house and steal money, to climb over the fence and take my own vegetables. But no more. I've gotten free of that ignorant fist that was pinching and twisting my secret self. The universe and the light of the stars come through me. I am the crescent moon put up over the festival gate. So we live in this world where there's not a lot of focus or attention on that inner goodness. and basic assumption that we are all good and we all have light in us. And there's also not a lot of opportunities to like shine that light brightly. We're all stuck on the wheel of productivity and self-improvement. Like even in this quarantine, I'm still constrained by time. I still can't relax. I still am trying to just like get things done and keep it moving. And to be able to look inwards, it takes so much courage, and to like pull out all of those things that we don't like in ourselves. Yeah, and I think that's a really big part of the journey of self-discovery. And because we're all human beings, we all have innate belongingness, and we all have innate light. And I think one of the best things I've discovered and most important on this journey is that when I look inside beneath all of the stuff, I'm good, and it is good. And I just will repeat part of the poem: the universe and the light of the stars come through me. I am the crescent moon put up over the festival gate. Thank you.
Thank you. That was incredible. I feel like I also listen to your story. It's interesting because I feel like I know you so well, but I also feel like I learned a couple things about you, or understood some things more deeply, particularly when you were talking about when you became a Christian. And it really made sense to me why you are so great in mindfulness and meditation and Buddhism, with saying, hey, this feels good to me and this doesn't, so I'm going to drop this and pick this up, and having those boundaries and allowing yourself that. And I think that's really healthy and great. And I feel like I understood it in a more deep way just listening to you now, which was kind of cool. And I mean, I really liked hearing about how you were able to touch that spirit and that inner goodness in your experience in Christianity. And I'm wondering, were you ever able to have that experience with your Jewish background too?
That is such a good question. And it's really funny because like I went to a Jewish day school when I was younger, and part of like for the 8th grade trip, you go to Israel. And when I came back, I was like giving this speech at my graduation. And one of the things I said is, my family here may not understand how I feel, but I know that my real family in Israel does. And my brother and sister have made fun of me about that for the last like 20 years. They never let me live it down. And that's why, because I just felt spirit there, and I didn't know what to call it.
Oh.
Yeah.
That is really cool to me that you know, since you were a kid, you've always been in touch with this part of yourself.
And even like when we like in Jewish school, you do like a prayer time, and I never knew what the words meant, but I remember swaying. Like I would just sway like back and forth like this. And you know, now I know. While I was feeling spirit, you don't have, because when you feel spirit, you don't have to know what things mean.
I love that. That is so cool. It was making me like reflect on myself a little bit too, in that I think that I don't know, it's just interesting because I was having this conversation with somebody earlier today. We were talking about that inner goodness and sort of touching God within ourselves. And just about like what you'd said, how we're not really all the crap and all of our problems and our thoughts. That's not actually us. And it kind of relates to what Heather said about, you know, even like the meanest, baddest, scariest person, like deep down there's love in them, and there's this little tiny person who needs to be loved, that, you know, we're not all the junk that's going on. Yeah. And it's just interesting to like hear the continuity in you guys, and also in the conversation that I had earlier too. But I don't know, I think that some people do have like an innate ability to tap into that easier than other people. And I've always thought that you've had that. And I think that we tap into it in different ways. I think some people tap into it with acts of kindness for other people. Some people it's more religion or spirituality. It just seems like we all have different ways of accessing that. And I think it kind of seems like finding what works for you is the trick. But I definitely felt like I heard Heather talking about that too.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. I didn't have so much questions as except for that one, but I just loved what you talked about. And I particularly liked what you said about building up your life from rock bottom too. And I felt like Heather, I kind of heard Heather say that she had that moment where she knew she was going to die if she didn't get sober. And I do feel like for a lot of us, we can see a point in our lives where it was really, really low. And then we just kind of grew from there. And I don't know, I think that's a really beautiful thing.
That's the universal story, right? Of
Yeah.
transformation and self-discovery in the Bible, and every religious text and every celebration we have, that is the story. And so we're all living it out in these different ways.
Yeah. I think that is sort of like a pivotal part of the hero's journey. Definitely. All right, Jordana, thank you so much. That was amazing. Thank you. I feel like I should be clapping or something. It's kind of funny without the like, do you guys feel like that too a little bit? Rachel's clapping. All right, you guys. So next up we have Mariah in the hot seats, the metaphorical hot seat. Hi, Mariah. Did I say your name correctly?
Yeah, Mariah.
Like Mariah Carey. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Well, you guys are in my living room right now, so I kind of feel like we're all sitting here together in my living room, like comfortable, chilling. So thank you for having me here in my living room with you all. Yeah, I think I want to thank Rachel too for inviting me. We know each other from school, so it's been a good run so far. She's helped me a lot with just kind of calming down about some of the expectations we have in our program. So she's definitely like a light. Yeah. So yeah, I think kind of what has sparked my interest in this self-discovery process, especially today in this time, is this innate sense of control that I want to have all the time. And I think it's even heightened now because there's so many things about our time right now that I cannot control. Whereas like in my normal routine in life, you know, I don't know, a month ago, right? 6 weeks ago or whatever, it was a little less obvious, but now I'm realizing like, oh, there are some things even in my schedule or even in just like the way I live my life that I just want to control. And so I've had this kind of reflection time with all the time that I've had recently, to really reflect on like where that's coming from. I think it's no surprise to me that it's like that this kind of control is, you know, new. Like I think I've always kind of had it, but I think it's just this time has really, you know, given me like the space to like reflect on it. Yeah, and I think part of it comes from my like unconventional like childhood. Obviously, like, you know, a lot of people can point to like certain aspects of their childhood or that really shaped and formed them and informed like the way they lived their lives, you know, later as adults. And I think part of my story is, you know, how I was raised. And my parents really like weren't necessarily involved in my life. So my dad was an alcoholic. You might hear my dog, sorry. My dad was an alcoholic. And we didn't really see him very much. And when we did, he was abusive. So that was, you know, yeah, that was a thing. And my mom was a drug addict. So she was addicted to cocaine especially. And when I was 6 or 7 years old, that's when my mom was caught with drugs possession. and she was arrested. And so my sister and I, my younger sister and I, were put in foster care. And we were in foster care for about 8 years. Luckily, like, we were able to stay with family, which was like, I feel like that's like such a privilege to be able to, like, we were still in the system, but we were able to stay with like external, you know, like family members. So that was really fortunate. But like, as, you know, being a child and not being with your parents, like, there's just this reaction I think I had of just like, okay, if I can't control what's going on around me, or like where I'm living or who I'm living with, or, you know, even when I was living with my parents, like what we were going to eat, or like, you know, if I couldn't control the things like surrounding me, like what can I control? And so I would like control school, because I knew that that was like one thing that I could like do. It was mine. I had like my own routine with school. And so like, as soon as I realized that school was the thing that I could control, like I excelled in school. It was my escape from reality. And so I feel for the kids right now who are like home and have school as they're out, because like that has to be so challenging and so disruptive to them. So I totally feel for those children. Yeah, and so I think that was part of it. Another thing that I realized was, you know, this thing, like this sense of control, like really goes away when you realize that like there is like someone else there for you. And so when I accepted the fact that like the church was there to help me, like the community that I had and the family that I had was there to help me and not to, you know, harm me, that really helped me like release that that sense of control, I think, a little bit. So the church, like, they helped form me in a way that like I've never had such an influence on my life, where these certain individuals at my church, you know, from when we were just little, who really took us under their wing and, you know, like really raised us spiritually. Like, even, you know, we stayed with some of them at some point in our childhood. And I think was that loving act of like, selfless, I don't know, just love that was tangible, that I could see and that I could experience for myself, that really formed me. Yeah, that really formed me like religiously. And so, anyway, so that like through that, I kind of found my people, right? Like you find your people through life, and I found my people. And I think that they shaped my life in such a way that I knew that this was, I don't know, in a sense real, like this love was real, and that if I could receive it, then like I could give it too. I could share this love with other people. So I think that really started my journey of, I would just say like loving other people, like straight up. And so I was, like I said, I loved school. I was like one of those weird kids who loved school. And so like, I was so ready to go to college. Like I had it all planned out, ready to go. And when I went off to college, I knew exactly what I was going to study, and I knew exactly what I was going to do with my life, because I knew like I could control that. And then God was like, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to study that. And I was like, oh, I'm not good at biology? Who would have thought? So I took my first religion class, and my professor was like, I don't know, he was just so influential in my thinking of theology, that like I had this church that I loved, but I don't think I really thought about theology. Like I never really thought it through. And he challenged me to like rethink some things that I had always believed, but just in a very soft and sensitive way, that it wasn't frightening or scary. It was just like, oh, what about this? And like asking different questions. And so I took that class. It was an intro to Christianity class. And I was like, this is what God is calling me to do. Like, I need to study theology and religion. I don't know why. I was supposed to be a biology major. Like, I was ready to do that, but I was terrible at organic chemistry. So I was like, this is not my calling. So I took this class and it totally changed my major. And I was like, yep, this is what I'm gonna do. And so I was going to this church at the time when I was in college, and it was an evangelical church. And I like grew up in a mainline Lutheran church. So it was very different, but like I really was attracted to like the way they were organized and the way they did things and the way that they just like loved people. So that was really attractive to me. And they were gonna go on this mission trip to Tunisia and North Africa. And I was like, oh, I wanna go. I'm gonna sign up for this. I don't know anybody at this church. They don't know me. I'm just gonna go. I've never been out of the country, didn't have passport. You know, I didn't have any money for this trip. But I was just like, I think I need to go. And so I was accepted, and I went, and I had to raise all this money, and I got there, and I was like, whoa, like I love the world. Like I love the world. And I realized that God was calling me to like such bigger things than just like, okay, you know, studying theology. Like these are people living in the world, and like, how could I like participate in this? So I went, you know, after this mission trip, I learned so much about myself. I'm not even sure I remember what I did on this mission trip. I just remember loving and serving people and just like learning like about God. And that's pretty much what happens on a 2-week mission trip. Let me be honest. Yeah, so I came back, and I was like, went to my study abroad, whatever office. And I was like, look, I want to go somewhere where they speak French, but I don't want to go to France because I've been there. So where can I go that I can study abroad? And the director was like, well, why don't you go to Senegal? And I was like, okay, sure, no problem. And I was like, I don't even know where that is. Like, is that in the Caribbean or what? And it's not, it's in West Africa. So I like was like, all right, let's go. So I studied abroad, and that's another point in my life where I was just like, this is it. Like, you could just tell, like, there are certain parts of my life where I was just like, yes. And so I studied abroad, and I loved it so much that I like stayed another semester. And then I met a guy, fell in love. And I was like, I'm not coming back. Like, I'll come back to graduate, but I'm moving. And so I like came back, graduated, sold everything like that I had. And I had like nothing, but I sold it all. And I moved to West Africa, and I lived there. And I didn't even have a job or anything. And now looking back, I was like, oh my gosh, if this was my child, I would be like so nervous. Like, my child's just gonna move to Africa. Okay. But it's like, I don't know. I've always like been aware enough to listen. Like, if God was calling me, like I could listen to that call. But if I was distracted by other things, like it was really difficult for me to listen to that. So, so I lived in West Africa for a couple years and got married, and I was pregnant with our son, and I got a job teaching English. Like, I don't even know why they hired me. I was like not qualified. But I got a job, and so that's what mattered. And you know, I was pregnant, and then they had like elections in the country in the Ivory Coast, and then it broke out into a coup. And so there was like a civil war going on, and I was fine because I was like, no, I'm with my family here, my family from the Ivory Coast, like I'll be fine. And then, you know, I was threatened as an American, and and then like the embassy shut down, and they were like telling all the citizens, like, if you don't leave now, we can't help you. And the hospital, like, what really got me was like the hospital that I was going to get an epidural in, like, shut down. And I was like, oh, I'm going. So came back to the United States, and that was like really difficult to like have my son by myself, without, you know, my husband, we're now divorced, but my first husband, without him there, like, it was really challenging. It was really hard. But anyway, so I was able to do that. And so then, like, I had no job. I came back to the United States, and my church was like, hey, do you want to work for us? And I was like, I'm not qualified, but yeah, I'll work for you. I'll do children's Sunday school or something and figure it out. And then here I am back at the church that like helped like raise me. Like, I feel like this is full circle. And I'm realizing, like, look at this theology here. Like, I'm teaching these kids and these youth, like these high schoolers, like, I feel like I need more training. Like, I feel like I'm not really like, I don't know. I don't feel like I know what I'm talking about. So I went to seminary, a Mennonite Brethren Anabaptist seminary, which is very different from Lutheran. And yeah, another part in my story where I just learned so much more about who God is and who Jesus is. And I learned that, like, Jesus is the one who's for those who are outcasts, who are marginalized in society. And like, I took that and ran. And like, a piece of this that I missed, that I wasn't able like to share before because I got distracted, was that when I was like 16, my father died. And so when my father died, we weren't really close, but my mom said, hey, we're going to his funeral. And at first I was like, why are we going to this? Like, this, like, what do I want? Like, I don't want to do this. And my mom was like, no, we have to. So we went, and honestly, it was the best thing that I could have done, because we were able to meet my dad's side of the family for the first time. My brother, who I didn't know, my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, who are Jewish. And they took me in and loved me. Like, they didn't know me. They had no idea who I was. And they loved me like I was their own. And like, that kind of love, that it's like, it reminded me of the love of the church. And I was like, if somebody who doesn't believe in Jesus can love me like this, like, who else can love like this? And so I think that really started my journey of interfaith, of interreligious dialogue. And so I continued to study that, and just like, that's what I spend most of my time doing, is working on, you know, the methodology behind all that, and the philosophy of like how we can learn from the religious other, you know, how we can learn from other people who aren't like ourselves. And I think this point, you know, bringing it back to this, like, my natural tendency is to try and control. And God is always reminding me, Mariah, what are you trying to control? Like, you know, I got this. Like, you know, I have this. Like, you keep trying to control it, but like, you ain't got nothing on me. So that's kind of just like where I am right now. Like, you know, just trying to think through it and process it a little bit more. Yeah.
Cool. Wow. That was just such a like amazing, like intricate story. I don't know where to start.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I just feel like while most of us go on an inner hero's journey, you went on a very physical, you know, worldwide hero's journey, which is really cool. Yeah. And I really love your open-mindedness, and I just really hear, you know, in being open to this, you know, Jewish part of your family, and then also to other cultures, that you're really open to new people and new experiences.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
really cool. I have to say, one of the first questions that I'm just curious, and maybe this isn't very significant, but popped in my mind, was when you were first in college in theology class, what were some of the things that you opened your mind to? You said that your teacher said specifically, can you think about this a little differently? And I'm curious what you opened to there.
I mean, honestly, it was as simple as like reading the Bible. Like,
okay.
I was like, oh, like there's a different way to do this. Like, you don't just read it. Like you could study this. Like, I had no idea, like exegesis and hermeneutics and all that. I was like, oh, like people do this, like this, like for reals? I thought you just read it and like read stories about it. You know, I didn't really think, I mean, even like teaching Sunday school for all the times, like I never thought, like I just thought like the instruction books like shared like what you would say. But then I guess I thought, oh yeah, like someone has to create those instruction books. So I guess people study it, right? It was just like really neat to think of it that way. I think that and studying world religions, obviously that was like significant. That was a significant class. And even in like my master's program, like just bib lit classes, like with hermeneutics, like understanding, yeah, just a totally different way of thinking about it.
Yeah, and looking in a very deep way.
Yeah,
like too.
Like a unit of text, like diving into it and thinking about it historically, and I was like, this is so new. Like I never thought like this is what people did. And so I think that's what, like I teach theology and biblit and stuff. And I think that's what drives me is like, I could teach other students this, like, and that it's really interesting and it can be fun. Like, it doesn't have to be like super serious. Like you can have fun with this. Yeah, I think that's probably what it is.
That's so cool. I do think people think like, oh, that must be so boring, I couldn't tolerate it or something. But it sounds like for you, it's just really like mind expanding. And
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Wow. And I was wondering too, I'm taking this to the very beginning of your story, but what did you like about biology? What intrigued you?
Oh my goodness.
I want to study that.
The systems, you know, well, part of it was like, I wanted to be a doctor so I could help people.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna guess.
You know, and I was like, well, the only way to be a doctor is you have to study biology. And like in high school, I studied biology and I went to like a special school that did like bioengineering and stuff. And I really loved it. And then I got to college and I was on my own, and I think it just didn't fit my personality. It didn't fit me very much. I think I lost interest in it. I felt like there's nothing else to be discovered here. Like everything I'm learning is like somebody else's. Like I'm not learning like something new. Obviously that's not the case, but like that's just kind of how I felt. And I think, I don't know, theology just took it a whole different way for me, you know?
Yeah, it sounds like it wasn't your thing, but the good intention to help people has stayed with you.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious about that. It seems like when a lot of people hit orgo-chem, they're done. Oh, yeah. They're out.
Like you're mixing numbers and letters and like plants, like I don't know this.
And I had just one final kind of comment question. You know, when you first went abroad, you said you realized I love the world. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think, you know, growing up, I wasn't exposed to like, I was exposed to my block, you know, I was exposed to my part of town. It had a lot of diverse people, a lot of diverse personalities. And so I naturally can be around lots of different people, but I didn't know what the rest of the world looked like. And I didn't know like, that there was significant difference among people and that difference was beautiful. So when I first went abroad, I was like, this is so different, and yet it is so good. And I think, I think that was probably like the takeaway from that, was that, you know, we can be different, and we can love each other, and we can take care of one another, and we can be kind. We don't have to be the same to do all that. And I think that was probably, that was definitely one of the biggest takeaways.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I especially loved all the multicultural interfaith connections in your talk too. It's very cool. Thanks. Yes. All right, so guys, last but not least, we have Rachel Nelson. Rachel's getting very close to the camera.
Grandma's unmuting.
Oh no.
And Grandma found the unmute button. All right.
Well, Grandma, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, Grandma here. I don't know. I know all you guys in some fashion. And let's see. Yeah, I study philosophy of religion with Mariah over yonder there at the University of Birmingham. And I've been like zeroing in on like toilet bowl swirling with like these intersections of compatibility between like psychology and like Christian stuff. It's like, psychology, particularly Carl Rogers. I say that for you, Jennica. I hope he's your flavor flav, but maybe not.
Writing about him today.
In mind, he's one of your favorites. So
I love him.
So like all the different religions, and then in an extended way, compatibility between all that and mediumship, channeling, near-death experiences, particularly like encounters with what people would call a source or God or the light or whatever it is that they call many names, and certain revelations that they're given with that light, with that consciousness, spirit guides, all that stuff. And existentialism in particular, actually existentialism like holds the key to this, because existentialism is a philosophy that more so talks particularly about the features that we all encounter universally in existence. So like themes like anxiety, themes of death and what that does to us, all sorts of just different revelations that we can say that we all face. So I use that as kind of like a standard, because this is real, this is tangible. And if anything is real and true, then it is always true. So as that as a baseline, I go around looking for where that intersects in everything. And oddly enough, there is an intersection of compatibility where everything kind of like meets up in the middle. It's like the eye of the Jeremy Bearimy when we're talking about The Good Place here. There's this little dot where everything holds together. And it has a lot to do with the visceral gut sense that we all feel that we can't quite put our finger on, and maybe it's what some have called spirit tonight, that inner guidance, the inner knowing, what Mariah would call God, all of that pull, and it's that narrow bridge that Gordana talks about. And it's very difficult to like instructionally lay out. Like it never like writes itself out with instructions and then goes, and this is what this means. It's just a very strange, narrow pulling that when you're on it, it feels like joy. And when you're not on it, it feels like you are shrinking and it's like gritty inside of you. And it gets so gritty that the grit eventually makes you go, I need to pay attention to something here because I hate the way this feels. Like it very literally always feels like negative in the sense that you want to move beyond it and you reach for a better feeling. Like you know that you are not supposed to feel bad and you want to feel better, and you are always going to go on this search, be it every action you take, any religion that you pick to follow or to unfollow, every time you pray or meditate. I had this discussion with Heather before. When we do drugs, when we drink, even like the things that don't actually help. The reason we do it though is we're trying to move ourselves into a better feeling because we know that we deserve to be there. So I have recently come to define God as joy, the purpose of life to be joy. So God is like an emotion, more specifically, strangely enough. If you believe in a heaven, I don't think you've ever envisioned a heaven where you see yourself and there's not joy. It's usually everything is happening around you, therefore you're experiencing this sense of joy. You can have people chatting with you, being kind to you, and you're doing your favorite recreation in the heavenlies. And if you took out the emotion of joy from that picture, it wouldn't be heaven anymore. The emotion of joy that people encounter when they have these near-death experiences, take out the emotion of joy, and what is it? Take out the emotion of joy in life, and who cares? So, as far as I'm concerned at this moment, God is joy. Everything we do is to reach to a higher position towards joy. And there's this visceral experience that plagues us in a good way our entire life, that is that narrow bridge that navigates us between this feels so bad, I can't take it anymore, I need to figure out what's going on here and move myself to a better position. And in this quarantine time, small backstory, as you all know, politics have been all over the place. And started to feel really gritty inside after a while, like just not good. And as a good negative visceral experience will bring you to, I too was like, what the fuck is this? Like, I don't like how I feel. Like, it feels bad. Like, I feel like I'm getting short with everyone around me, and everything I look at, I just kind of have something bad to say. And I started to think, like, what is the root of this? Like, am I just like, am I depressed? Am I an angry person? What is the cause of all this? Then everything shuts down. We enter COVID time. So I'm sitting there and I think about these things a lot, just as is, but add on, like, I can't go to jujitsu. I can't go hang out with Jennica. I can't do anything, right? And it's just me and my thoughts. And the feeling of grit is growing more and more. And you flip on Facebook and there's a lot of things that can influence you on there. And they're not great things. Everybody's generally like taking bad jabs at someone they disagree with politically. And you don't commonly log on to Facebook and find people pointing out the good in life or calling out positive attributes in people and cheering them on and illuminating them in some way. So your thoughts can easily get snatched away and you just start building momentum towards the negative end. And in the quarantine, I realized that, like, who's doing this? Like, the world around me is not making me feel this way. I'm like in this house and I'm a student. I don't have an essential job. I'm in this house. Who is doing this? It's me. It's me and my choices with my thoughts, my focus, where I'm focusing my thoughts and what I'm choosing to zero in on. And what you choose to zero in on is like so important. And this is nothing that I never knew before. Like, I always value meditation and I value like imagination when you're meditating too, because you're focusing your thoughts where you want them to go and they take you places. They create the reality outside of you, I absolutely believe. Because it takes your emotions there later on into where joy is, somewhere in the middle, or gravitates you more to these like gritty places where you just shrink up and you close off. You don't have much to say to anyone and you don't want to talk to them. And if you do have something to say, you're thinking something negative right away because you've built this like habit with your thoughts. So I realized, like, this is all on me. Like, there are no outside influences other than Facebook. And it's me sitting here, like, thinking thoughts about myself and worrying. And then I'm logging onto Facebook and I've built this momentum with where my focus has been. So I'm latching onto the bad shit and getting all upset about these people and what they're saying about those people. And like, you're listening to all these like doomsday quotes from everyone, like the country's fucked now, or everything's a mess. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, everyone's saying the same thing. It's like, everyone's just picking out the bad stuff and I'm just taking it all and going with it. And I just realized, like, these are my thoughts and I know this shit, and I have just gone too far down the toilet here. So with that said, I also realized that this is also slightly very similar to law of attraction too. If anyone is like, I was gonna say attuned, it's a silly word to use though. If you if you are familiar with any work from anyone, but this is like the point of intersection where the religion, the existentialism, everything kind of collides, and it's the dot of the Jeremy Bearimy. And it's that you create meaning with everything. Every time you look around, you're making a judgment and you're making a decision. And this is all coming from you. Like, you're the one that's creating meaning for what you see. And there's a split moment where you know what you don't want, but you also know what you prefer at the exact same time. Like, anytime something grosses you out, it's because at the same time you know you prefer something else. And it's right at that line where there's like a fork in the road of your mind, and you get to pick. Like, do I sit here and I stare at the thing that I don't prefer, and then like I just keep staring at it, and then I start degrading the person, and then I start degrading people that are like them, and then I start making up stories about how we're screwed now if people think like this. And then those thoughts just don't stay there either. They like spread into every area of your life because you're building thought habits, and you're also building emotional habits with that. You feel negative because you're used to thinking negative. Or at that same moment, you can take like the other fork in the road, which it's like, it's a brilliant thing. You also know what you do want, and you can like be like, praise Ra Namaste. Now that I see that I don't prefer that, I know what I do prefer. And it doesn't mean that you have like this detailed path laid out, so to speak. But the only reason you know what you don't want is because you know what you do want. And you can start honing in on that feeling and kind of going like, that's cool. I just got a little clearer with myself. Like, I know what I like just a little bit more. And then you can start adjusting your life as needed. But that adjustment comes from you training your thoughts to stay on the bright side, whatever the bright side is for you, because it will be different for everyone else. Like, it's just supposed to be that way. As you can see, everybody came from all different positions of life, and like everyone needs different things, and you're going to think different ways, and different things set you free. So I was not taking like the bright side, the praise Ra Namaste. I'm a little clearer on what I want right now, like digging into that, and like therefore I would become more joyous if I did. Because the caveat to that is, if I stare at what I don't want and all the people that are doing what I don't want, and I'm making up like doomsday tales about all of that, at this same time, like, not only am I losing my joy, but I'm staying in the past too. Like, I'm stunting my own progress here. And I'm never gonna get the things that I do want, or to like walk into that life that I do want, or to like expand into that goodness that's now sitting inside of me that I know that I prefer. Because I'm basically staring at the past every day and just looking back at all these people. And I'm not building into the future. And I'm not accepting the world around me either. Like, to love, I would say, is synonymous with acceptance. And it's not so much like, to me, a mushy feeling around me, but the fact that like you're doomed to difference. Everyone is going to be different. And you have to find a way to accept everyone's difference and not like start to degrade them or demean them, regardless of who it is. And if you can't do that, you can't love. So love is more just this acceptance of like, they've got a thought, that's great. They're a human being. Our job that we cannot stop is to be free to create meaning and like define things for ourselves and make judgments. And they're doing just that. They're choosing. And that's like, the human is doing what the human's going to do. And choosers are never losers. So like, you're not a loser, man. That's just how you are. And I'm gonna go my way and you can go yours. And I can embrace all the differences. So then I started thinking about how hard it is to have acceptance. And I understand like a lot of this is just the habit of thought. Takes a minute to start spinning the other way, to teach yourself and to catch yourself when you're thinking something negative, to look for the positive and like zoom in on that. And what was I gonna say? Yeah, you have to master your emotions. But I started to think about, like, it's pretty difficult to do that because you do have this habit. So you want to respond with like some sense of emotion, like negative emotion, whenever, even when you open up Facebook and you see somebody saying whatever it is that they're saying, to teach yourself to accept and to not take it personally. So started to think about what the missing thing could be, at least for me, and maybe it doesn't work for everyone else. And I started to think about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, oddly enough. And we have this like saying that like we live a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu lifestyle, the BJJ lifestyle. And what that usually means in a more literal sense is like you love eating acai, the little purple acai, like ice cream type things. You do something healthy with your life. You probably do some yoga. You take care of yourself like physically, right? BJJ lifestyle. But I discovered that this BJJ lifestyle is more of a philosophical thing. And it kind of has the answers in the sense that, like when you go to jiu-jitsu, and if you haven't done jiu-jitsu, just to like try and like break it down real quick, it's like wrestling, except once you hit the ground, that's where the party starts, and people are trying to like choke you out with their clothes and bend your joints the wrong way, and everyone's sweating on top of you, and it's like, it's crazy, man. So it takes a really long time to get a black belt too. It's like 10 to 15 years. So the thing is, whenever you're training, it's grueling and it fucking sucks. And every day is like, it feels like it's a terrible day for you. Your timing's never perfect. You never do all the moves that you intended to do or that you know that you should do for certain things that people are doing to you, how to get out and like escape certain things. And yet you continue to come back for like years, like years that you do this. And it seems like a horrible time. But you learn, somehow, you come to learn and to trust this like deep reality that's going on that like contradicts like the way it feels, or like the sense that you suck and that everyone around you sucks and no one's getting better. And the deep truth is that even though it feels this way, and even though like that white belt over there, he's been doing that wrong move for years and still can't figure it out, and you still keep getting trapped in like someone's like side mount, and you don't know why, somehow everyone's getting better at the same time. It's very paradoxical. And it's such a prolonged period of time, but it's just short enough, right? So it's like 10 to 15 years to get a black belt. Life is like 70 years. So if you're having these moments where you think you suck and you think nothing's happening in a span of 10 to 15 years, how much more passive is like the progress to you in your life of like 70 years? But the thing we're missing when we like live life is we think like the world is shit, and that if everyone's not doing things that we believe around us, then the world's going to shit, and we're not getting better, no one's getting better, just look around us. And jiu-jitsu just has this positive mentality behind it that I think it would benefit us if we adopted. That even though it looks like shit, and I feel like I'm getting my ass kicked and I'm doing everything wrong, and it looks like everybody else sucks too, it's not really true. I can trust that I know that everyone is getting better, like for sure. And the view is like the white belt is the black belt. Like the white belt sitting in front of you, like you know that's actually a black belt in 15 years, and you have no doubts, right? And we don't apply that to the people around us. And then in jiu-jitsu, we call it games, right? The style that you train with. Everybody's got like their own personal style because everyone's just unique, and it also just comes out that way whenever you're training. Certain people are good at certain things. People respond differently to different things. And people will put you in things and you don't get pissed off at them because they fucked you up. You have the sense that like if you want to get better, the idea here isn't that you get pissed at everybody and that you need to somehow make them like not play their game so you can win and everyone looks like you in the end. Like you let go of the control, and you accept that their game is different, and you start turning inward and going, okay, I want to find myself in a different position. You don't blame the other person for being there. What do I do? And you begin to start examining your habits while you're rolling and be getting mindful of like what's happening as you're rolling with people. And so just like with like mastering your emotions, training your thought habits to think of the good, you start doing the same thing in jiu-jitsu, but it's with like movements. You start paying attention to like, where was my grip? Should I have broken their grip here and then maybe they wouldn't be mounted on top of me 2 minutes later? There's little details in there that you need to start making new habits for that will change your position. So like, bigger span here, we try to master our emotions because we want joy in life. And when we're not happy, we act like we don't know what the fuck happened and the whole world is like doing this to us. And I think we should just take some tips from jiu-jitsu, some of these principles of just letting go and knowing that it doesn't really matter what anyone's doing around you. They're not ruining your life. Doesn't matter what their mood is, doesn't matter what the politics scene is. If you want to change your position, like you got to go examine your own habits here. And like this is Stoic too. The Stoics talked about this all the time. It doesn't matter what happens. It's up to me to start to like modify myself. I can endure anything because I control my thoughts. So I'm not chained up by anything. So you retrain your motions and your movements and you figure out what you need to adjust. You find yourself in a new position. You retrain your thought habits and you start being mindful of like where your mind's slipping, where is it going, where is it focusing? And you will find like your life in like a different position, or at least it's true for me. So like, yeah, in a nutshell, that's what I got. Thanks, Jennica.
Thank you, Rachel. I have definitely had a similar experience recently where I'm finding my mind going to places and thoughts and irritations coming up. And I'm like, oh, wait, this is just me alone in a room. The person's not here. Like, clearly I'm the one causing this in here. And I feel like we're able to see that in a very tangible way right now that we're normally not. I think we always have that awareness that our thoughts are causing things, but when you're alone, you're isolated, then you really know that it's your thoughts, not the other person.
Yeah, nobody else there.
Yeah, and I think it's right. I think, you know, retraining and rewiring is so important, and it takes a long time too. Mm-hmm. It really does. It's tough. But I loved you like sharing more about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because I know this is like a huge part of your life, but I feel like I don't really know that much about it, except that I know you're going to this gym and you're like fighting people and like, I don't know, so it was really cool to like hear the philosophy. And I really like that you touched on that real change is gradual, and often we can't see it when it's happening. I think that we always have to keep that bird's eye view and kind of that mind of not knowing, because we don't really know what's going on and we don't really know what progress that we're making.
Yeah, Alan Watts is like a cool quote. Like I always like this quote, and it's chaos on one level is always harmony on a higher level.
Oh, interesting. That's very cool. And I did have a question for you. You know, I feel like everybody tonight really touched on touching that place of God or love and like an inner voice inside themselves. And I was wondering, just on a personal level, when does that happen for you? Like, when do you find that coming up? Is it praising God, or is it in jiu-jitsu, or is it studying philosophy? How does that manifest in your life?
It's like in a few places, right? Like, yeah. When I went to seminary, like, and I was starting to like kind of have a Mariah experience, but like differently, like I was like pissed at first because I was like, what the fuck? I went to church my whole life and like nobody mentioned like how to read this thing. And it changed everything, like the context and everything. It was like, this changes the conclusions of all the stories and all the doctrines that I was ever told. Mm-hmm. And I was really pissed for a while, but then what started to happen was like the ancient philosophers would talk about this. They would call it reflecting. And whenever you would like reflect, like there's something in like inside you that like breaks free of an old thought every now and then. And it just explodes, and it's sort of like a chain on you that was like brought to you by a thought that had been handed down at some point in your life. And whenever I would have like an epiphany or something, like it feels like you're getting elated. It feels joyous because you just feel like extra free for a minute. And old school, like Socrates philosophers, like they say to seek knowledge, because like that moment of like elation was like fucking divine, and it feels divine. And it's like a moment of joy, because you walk around with less layers, I guess. And hopefully, usually, it makes you more accepting, because it's like one more thing that gets stripped away that helps you look at the world and not take it so personally.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, and they don't happen as often now, but they still happen. And sometimes, if I focus on the beauty of things, like if I sit outside for a really long time and I stare at the sunlight on the trees, and I feel right here birds chirping, I kind of feel like I'm getting embedded into all this like songage that's going on around me of life, and then I can feel the same sense of elation, but it's coming from like a different way. Sometimes when I pray, it's more like I have a negative emotion going on, and I'm like venting almost. And in that venting, it can take me to a better place. So I feel a little bit elated when I pray. When I meditate, sometimes I just feel like scrambled eggs, but I have epiphanies come through that make me feel elated, and other times it just makes me feel more connected to everything. So like I have these moments like all over the place, and in jiu-jitsu too, because it gets your mind off of things, and like again, you walk in and you feel like tight and constricted from life and your worries and everything, and when your body starts moving and you start loosening up, your mind starts loosening up, and you forget all your worries that you had eventually, like an hour and a half later, and you're in a different place. So I would count that also as moments where I feel connected. And then there's always the weird dream occasionally that happens, where like there's some strange beam of light or something like that, or you encounter one of those really good feeling dreams, and it just feels really good and warm when you wake up, and you're like, that was something else.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's more Freudian than Rogerian, Rachel.
Yeah. Sometimes there's some channelers that I'll listen to, and when I listen to them like give their lecture on these like certain things, some of them go into like channeling sessions, and like it can crack open some like feel good things, and you just feel like, oh yeah, that one's good, and it makes me want to listen to it a few more times to help me move into a better space.
Cool. Thank you, Rachel. Well, I was thinking, because we are approaching the end of our evening, if anyone, do we have a chat on this, Rachel? We do have a chat. If anyone has any last questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. But I think if people don't, we'll just start winding down. I think this was awesome. I know we weren't expecting a lot of people tonight, but I think it was fine. It was really intimate, and I really liked that it was a really small, nice group of such powerful women. And I saw a lot of connections between everybody's talks. It sounded like, really touching this peaceful knowing, if you want to call it your Buddha mind or God or whatever. But it sounded like everybody was definitely talking about how they got in touch with that, among other really awesome themes. So it definitely gave me a lot to talk about. I liked that Heather talked about too, how, it's so important to reach out to people, because we are kind of alone with our thoughts right now. And we don't have anybody to check them, and that can be kind of hard. So it was so nice to just connect with all of you all tonight, and to see some of my good friends and also new faces. Each of you were really amazing. So I think we are ready to wrap things up. Thank you, everybody who talked tonight. I was very brave. I think self-discovery is something that's, it's a very vulnerable topic too. So thank you.
Thank you. Great to talk with you all.
Yeah, it was really good to see you on here. You look beautiful, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
You do. I was like, she looks so beautiful.
I have like a blouse on and sweatpants, as I've been doing for the last month. It's wonderful.
Nice.
Thanks for doing this, Jennica.
Yeah, no, this was really
That was
fun.
nice.
Everyone's talks are really good. And Mariah and Heather, you were awesome too.
We have our very own Oprah here.
Aw, it's so fun, you guys. I love this. It's like a process of learning to be more comfortable on Zoom. Like, I'm definitely more comfortable in real life. You know, it's like you have to, I don't know, ease into it.
Right.
Sound good.